Hello everyone and welcome to the round 19 trade targets and burning questions live stream. Thanks everyone for joining me on this Tuesday evening. Obviously lots to unpack this week. I've just double checked my microphone. It looks like I should be connected, so you guys should be able to hear me. I know I've been setting a trend of being mute at the beginning, but hopefully not the case just right now. Hello to Davey K, Jeff Brods, Nathan, Cooper, Gavin. I'm seeing some big scores being posted there. Yep, I wasn't able to do the roundup stream unfortunately, but we'll do a quick sum up of how I went just in a little bit as well. But thanks to Bailey, Sandy, Gavin, Oliver, all being in the chat. Great to see you all here. Harris is saying thanks for the Manu tip. Give us a shout. Yeah, look, Manu was that is one of the few times I think this season that I've had a gut feeling that has just completely come off in like the biggest way possible. I was just like, I said it I think on the video, and I think I said it on the stream on Friday. I was just having there's just a feeling about Manu just going huge. Like we all know that he does well when he plays at number 1 of 6, basically not in centers. But I just thought there was like an extra thing that he could do this week. Just the matchup was good. Thought he'd make a bunch of tackle breaks, which he did, but yeah, 191 points in the end was insane. I kind of wish I just straight captained him, but look, I vice captained him. I was able to loop him, so that did help me get a good week overall. Quite a few people did obviously vice captain or straight captain Manu, so yeah, there was lots of big scores this week. I'm just happy that I was owning him. I feel like if you were watching that as a non-owner, you would absolutely have hated that. He's obviously in a little bit of doubt in terms of this calf injury, because you saw towards the end of that game he obviously had that play where he cramped up and then started running again. I don't think there's any integrity issues there. I think it's literally like he stopped, he felt a cramp, and then he was like, alright, cool, and then he just saw a gap and then just went for it. There's been some talk about that, obviously, that he's in doubt, but it seems as though he's good. I think there was some footage that the Roosters put out or the NRL put out, and it looked like he was moving okay. So for now, I'm going to assume that he's going to play this week in the centers, but yeah, he'll definitely be a kind of topic of discussion for sure. So I'll quickly just start getting onto the topics for the week. So I'll quickly just wrap up how I went for last week. So I scored 14.27 in the end after updates, which was, look, I'm happy enough with that. I did leave some points on the table, unfortunately, because I did the loophole. It meant I dropped Isaac Dungle. So he scored 82 points. I played Taylor May over him, so there's like a 40-point gap there, which is kind of frustrating. Other players did well on my bench, I think like McInnes, etc. But look, I can't really complain. I was able to land the VC on Manu, which really helped me out. So we went up about 670 spots, so now sitting about 2,500, which is really good. I'm really happy with how things have gone over the last 6 to 8 weeks. Just been kind of steadily climbing, and hopefully the intention is that at the end of the season, I hit my highest rank at the very end, just to completely climb up. And it feels better, starting low, kind of going up, as opposed to say starting high, going down, back up, and having a bit of a roller coaster. Just trying to continue the steady climb. That's the intention there. And just to answer Davey's question, which is the first one I can see here, which was you're ranked at 12.2k for the season. Any thoughts of making the top 1k? So the difference is about 900 points. So that is quite a big gap. 900 points. You're looking at about in 6 rounds to go. So that's over 120, close to 150. It's basically 150 points extra a week that you need to make up. I think 1k is, I would say, is probably a little bit tough to get to, just on the basis that an extra 150 points a week is a lot. But obviously, at that ranking, you just kind of go hell for leather. You definitely can easily go top 5,000, 2,000 is maybe even an opportunity as well. I'm still looking at top 1k. I think I'm about 260 points behind top 1k, so that's about a 40-50 point gap that I need to make up each week, which I should be able to do hopefully, but we'll see. You can see I've only got 6 trades left, so not many trades left to go, and I've got a Pappy size problem in my team as well, like probably the most of you out there as well. So that's how I'm going at the moment. Quick shout out as well before we get into all the stuff, just in terms of the group league. So shout out to Shano, scored 1,658 last week, which is enormous. And so now he's at over a rank of 6.4k, so he must have had an absolutely massive jump there. And shout out as well to the top 10. So we had Rob, who's in 5th overall. We have Alex from the Bearded Clams. I think you actually messaged me on Twitter as well. He commented on one of my posts on Twitter, so he's doing really well. Shane, Toby, Talon, Vaughn, Guy, Samuel, James, and Chris, all absolutely smashing it. Shout out as well to the Whisperer. He's in the chat as well. He was actually in here in the top 10 last week, but he unfortunately didn't vice captain Manu, so he wasn't quite able to hit the top scores. But look, he's hanging around there, doing pretty good himself as well. Alright, that's enough of that. And one last shout out as well would be to the members. So one new member from last stream is cheese, tomato, onion, mayo. Shout out to you because of your username. You make me really hungry each week whenever I see that name. And look, I had to add a custom emoji just because of Manu's performance. What a man. We had the what a man emoji, but I thought we just have to make it what a Manu. After that enormous performance, getting the call right in terms of him doing well, just had to do it. So yeah, just a way for you guys to show support to the channel. If you're interested, you can use stupid emojis that I've made up I made in my spare time. All right, enough of that. Let's get into the meat of the stream. So look, I insinuated it on Twitter. I literally was like, post your round 19 questions and topics, and I said, with a caveat that I know that people are going to be asking about Pappenhausen replacements and things. Look, I'm not surprised. The questions are all about that. Like, do you go Tedesco? Do you go Latrell? Do you go Cherry Evans? Do you go Val Holmes? Do you go like Manu if you haven't got him? Do you go Drinkwater in a pod? Do you go Ponga as a pod? Like, honestly, the amount of options is crazy. Cherry Evans, I think I already mentioned his name as well. There's so many people that you can consider to go for Pappenhausen. So I wanted to try to separate. It would be too hard, I think, to have all of those people at the same time in terms of like one screen. So I've tried to separate it into like the more popular buys, a couple of pods, and then a few other left of field options as well. Quick shout out as well to Supergun. Aman made my team this year, well influenced in a big way. Fully respect your effort, impressive. Thank you so much for that. Hopefully your team's going well. And Aman Whisperer, the GOAT SC, thank you so much, Sticky Nicky, as well for that. So yeah, I think we'll get into the whole discussion. So I'm seeing heaps and heaps of questions about the Pappy replacements. So just quickly to maybe add some clarification as to what's going on here. There's a lot of stuff happening on the screen. So with all the players, we've got their draw, we've got their current price, their break even, their average, and their draw coming up. Now, the one thing I've highlighted with the draw is that you'll notice it's not quite done based on the actual team that they're versing. So for example, if you look at Latrell, he's got Eels in round 22, but that's like a bright green color. So what I've actually done is I've taken the average Supercoach points conceded to that position that these guys play in, and I've used that as a kind of difficulty, because we all kind of know, looking at on face value, Latrell's draw is quite tough, but I wanted to dive into that because some of those teams, like for example, like the Eels, they actually concede the most points to fullbacks out of any other team. So you look at an Eels matchup on paper for Latrell, it's actually not as difficult as what it seems to be. So I wanted to apply that for all the players that we're going to talk about, just because that's the thing that we're most interested in, is obviously the Supercoach points that these guys are able to score. So I wanted to add that clarification as to why some of the colors might look a bit strange. So for example, Eels is a bright green, and it'll actually be a little bit different when we look at some of the center wing players, like your Holmes, for example. The color shadings are a little bit different because the teams concede a different amount of points to each position. So I wanted to kind of just clarify that. Table to the left of them is just their scoring composition by base scoring, creative points, which is like your try assists, etc., and evasive, which is like your tackle breaks. Last table, again, shout out to SC Playbook for their true ownership stats, which is an awesome resource. I'll put a link in the chat just after I've finished explaining, just where you can access all these true ownership numbers. It's really good for, at this point of the season, we're obviously looking to try to target pods, see who the higher owned guys are. So for example, Latrell, he's not really a pod anymore if you actually look in the higher rankings. So you can see like 52% of the top 100 own Latrell. Makes sense though, because the guys who've pushed up to that high rank probably owned him in the bye week. They probably did really well, so they've got to that stage. But you can see that Latrell's actually the most highly owned player out of these five guys that we've got here. So Teddy's less owned. So that kind of also can come into your thinking as to, whether you think that these guys are a good option to bring in based on their ownership numbers. If you're further behind, you want to chase some pods, maybe you look to anti-pod Latrell. The draw is maybe a little bit tougher. So all of that out of the way, the same thing will be presented when we look at some of the center wing options as well. So in terms of, Pappy replacements. So Tedesco, Latrell, for example, we'll talk about Tedesco and Latrell first. I think those are the two key guys. So the last few weeks, I've kind of been more on the side of Teddy, mainly because of the draw. It was very interesting when I did put this together, and looking at Latrell's draw, it doesn't actually look as bad, because even the Storm, for example, they've been conceding quite a few points recently, and they're about 10th to fullbacks, so they're not even like your top tier, like 16th or 15th. Funnily enough, the Roosters are actually the best team at defending fullbacks so far this season. So I'm still favouring Teddy. Part of the reason for that is he's a little bit cheaper. I know that really doesn't make so much of a difference now. They're all selling Pappenhausen, who's super expensive, but he is a little bit cheaper, which is nice. I do think that even though Latrell does have those 2 decent games in the Warriors and the Eels in there, and I think he can still do okay in games against like the Storm, for example, just that run home is kind of bothers me a little bit with Latrell, and the ownership now is higher than Tedesco, whereas I think Teddy's draw overall is just softer. I know Teddy doesn't have the goal kicking, but again, one of the things I wanted to highlight with that scoring composition is that, yes, Latrell's base is lower at 17 versus, say, a Teddy of 30, but I think they net each other off in terms of their floor, because with Latrell's goal kicking versus Teddy's extra base plus probably slightly extra tackle breaking, I feel like both of them kind of sit on the same floor. So really then I think it comes down to who's got then the potential for the extra attacking stats. And that's when I say, okay, I'll probably look at the draw. That's the reason why I'll probably go Teddy. That coupled with the fact that he's also got slightly lower ownership than Latrell. That's why I'm still leaning to go with Tedesco. The concern with me with not going with Latrell is that for my own team, I don't own any other Rabbitohs players. So if you kind of want to still get a piece of the Rabbitohs, I think I don't mind going Latrell. He's probably the best option as well to go for from the Rabbitohs. But it is a bit concerning that I won't have any of them, and they do obviously look better. The thing in my head is that the last 3 weeks they have also versed easy opponents. The Storm are also not in a great moment, so they probably will still do okay this week. I wouldn't be surprised if Latrell still goes like 80 plus. Brods has said it in the chat there that Trell does turn up for big games. 100% agree. I think I posted that in the bye week that his average against the bigger teams is still pretty decent. It's probably around a 70. I just think Tedesco can probably just about do a little bit better than that. So I'm just thinking of going with Tedesco. I think there's added motivation for the Roosters as well, with where they're sitting on the ladder. And I think despite their recent losses, like to say Penrith and Sharks, they looked quite good as well. And so Teddy in his State of Origin performances were really good too. So I'm still thinking Teddy is the one who I want to go for. If you're looking at a head-to-head between Latrell and Tedesco. Cooper, just to answer your question, these ownership numbers are not inclusive of this week's trade. So obviously these numbers will bump up. Cherry Evans is being bought, Tedesco is being bought. These are all the numbers as of, say, round 18. Eli, is it because I'm a Roosters fan? Definitely not. No, I'm trying to be as kind of objective as I can. I am a Roosters fan, but I'm not going to sit here and say that, I'll go for my Roosters players. I'm trying to be like as objective as I can. So I'm looking at, ownership, looking at the draw, who's got the better potential to score better. I will say that Teddy's score was a little bit flattering last week. He scored 99 and he got a pretty junk time try at the end as well, which I guess is a bit concerning. The Roosters scored 54 points and Tedesco, without that second late try, only would have scored maybe, say, 60, 70. But I'm still thinking that Tedesco is probably who I want for this week. And also, it's a small factor, but this week's also a little bit tougher for captaincy, whereas I think Tedesco could be the best captain this week. I don't think no one would be really captaining Latrell, even though he's been doing well. Storm still are the Storm. You don't maybe have as much confidence. So that's another small reason why I'm also maybe looking at Tedesco just over him this week. Now, someone's asked in the chat, Jeff said, I'm not going to say fat troll. Well, I just said it, but that's a bit disrespectful. I'm not going to say that to the guy's face. But Latrell or Cherry Evans. So we'll talk about Cherry Evans as well. So I've made my kind of I think I've made my comments that I'd probably prefer to go Tedesco over Latrell. If you're then looking at, say, number 2, because a lot of people will be selling Pappenhausen, a lot would be selling Ezra Mann and switching, with the likes of Nico Hines to a fullback or maybe even a halfback as well. Cherry Evans won't be goal kicking. It looks like Garrick's going to take that back from this week onwards because Garrick took the last goal kick from last week's game. But Cherry Evans, the last couple of years, shout out to SuperCoach Guns. So this stat below the table, I just wanted to pull that off from Twitter. Cherry Evans has finished the season quite well over the last couple of years. So he had a 76 average from 2020 onwards and 109 from 2021. Now that 109 is a bit of an outlier because it was a season where there were blowout games. But the 76 in 2020 is encouraging, and that wasn't inclusive of goal kicking. So I still think that... So Cherry Evans, for example, you look at his draw. This is points conceded to, say, halfback. So the Dragons, for example, a great opponent this week. Titans is a good one. Bulldogs at the back end of the season. And Cherry Evans doesn't really face any of those top tier kind of, your Panthers or your Storm or even your Cowboys. So he's probably got the best run out of even Latrell or Tedesco. I think him and Latrell can be fairly equal in terms of point scoring. He's also more of a pod. So Latrell's I think Latrell from memory is the number one bought player this week, whereas Cherry Evans, he's being heavily bought, but not to the likes of Latrell. So he's going to stay more of a pod as well, which is kind of coming into my thinking as to why maybe I'm also preferring Cherry Evans over Latrell, just for a bit of the pod factor. So Jeff, to answer your question, I'm personally thinking of going Cherry Evans as well. I still think that Manly are looking in a good place at the moment. Coming off a wave of confidence from Origin, I think he's historically ended the season well. So I don't think it's a bad bet to go with Cherry Evans. He's also got a pretty solid floor as well. So even in those slightly tougher games, like maybe say the Roosters or maybe the Sharks, if you look at his numbers, he's got a base of 28 for a halfback, which is quite a lot. Add in some runs, you're looking at a minimum of 40. If you look at his scores from the beginning of the season, he was basically averaging like just 60 flat, which is kind of his floor essentially. So yeah, I don't mind also going with Cherry Evans as well. And I think I would also slightly prefer Cherry Evans over Latrell, but I think those are definitely the top three. So Teddy would be number one, probably Cherry Evans just number two, and then Latrell number three for like a direct Pappenhausen replacement. Now, a lot of people are looking at the Cowboys players this week as well, so we'll get to Val Holmes in a little bit too. But say, for example, Drinkwater. Drinkwater's kind of had a bit of a lull of the last few weeks. Only 41 last week, but it was a tougher game against the Sharks. But I also thought he was going to be goal kicking last week. I said he was going to goal kick, and then Chad Townsend took them, and I was like, what the hell? Drinkwater was taking them before, so apologies for anyone who bought him thinking that he was going to goal kick. That was pretty strange that he didn't. And now that Val Holmes has returned, it doesn't look like he's going to be goal kicking anyway. Cowboys definitely have one of the best draws for the run home as well. You've got the Tigers this week, Dragons, Bulldogs, Warriors, all in the next five weeks. So that's a really great run of games. Only the Panthers in round 25, but that's the last game of the season where potentially the Panthers could rest a lot of their players as well. He's 601k, which is a good price as well, don't get me wrong. I personally, though, do prefer Holmes over Drinkwater. Again, ownership is part of the factor of that. Drinkwater is about 20% owned across most of the major ranked tiers, whereas I know Val Holmes is about 0 or like 1%, and Val Holmes has got the goal kicking. And so I think Holmes is going to be a bit safer floor with slightly higher upside. So I know a few people on Twitter were asking, Drinkwater or Holmes, if you're looking at one of the two. I would actually slightly prefer Val Holmes, but Drinkwater is also a great option, a little bit more of a pod, but I don't think I can rank Drinkwater above Teddy, Latrell, or Cherry Evans in my opinion. So that's my thoughts on Drinkwater as well. Now, finally on Ponga, I saw someone a little bit earlier said, how did Ponga slip his way onto there? There was Gavin B said, how did Ponga sneak on there? Is he lost? That's a good shout. So the reason I put him here is someone on Twitter also asked about Ponga as a pod, and I thought it'd be good to just talk about Ponga because I know that the Knights do have a good draw home. I'm actually personally not that keen on Ponga. I don't think it's a bad trade-in by any means, but in these kind of positions where at fullback we've got so many good options, or maybe at halfback, I just think I'm looking at the overall team as well. I don't think the Knights are going to be super attacking. They do have a pretty good run home, don't get me wrong. The toughest game is probably the Sharks in round 25. I just don't have great confidence in them putting a lot of points on. I know Ponga is also goal kicking, which could be good. I've just got more confidence in those teams who are kind of hovering around the 8. Your Roosters, the Rabbitohs are pretty well entrenched now in the top 8, but your Manlys, Cowboys are obviously pretty confident, but those teams who I consider slightly in a level above, I think they're just going to score more points in general versus maybe the Knights. So I don't think I would necessarily go for Ponga myself. I know he is a serious pod, but I think you can go maybe like Cherry Evans at halfback, slightly less of a pod, but still a pod, and I think he can do just as well. And I've got more confidence as well in Manly than say I do with the Knights. So that's my thoughts, I guess, on these 5 players overall. I know a few people have asked about, so Ian, just to answer your question, you said DCE or Holmes over Tedesco. I personally don't think so. I still think Teddy is the number one option this week as a buy. I think he's got one of the best matchups this week, and I think the Roosters run home it's a bit up and down, don't get me wrong, but he's kind of got that floor that he can do well. And so yeah, I think for me, Teddy is still going to be the guy who I want to get in. Bit of a proven gun as well. Now that there's a few topics and discussions coming out about Holmes, so I thought we'd get onto that. So one of the other strategies that people could look to do with trading at Pappenhausen is obviously you can switch maybe one like a Garrick or a Manu who've got fullback eligibility. You can swap them to fullback, and then you can bring in a centre for Pappenhausen. So this is where the likes of, say, a Val Holmes can be bought, although Val Holmes actually does also have fullback eligibility. If you're a non-Ruben Garrick owner, you could even get Garrick potentially. To'o is an option. I've thrown in Adam Dewey here because I think I saw him on Twitter as a bit of a pod as well, and I feel like pods are a bit of a discussion point as well at this point of the season. But yeah, this is essentially the same layout as what I showed in the previous section. So the reason I'm actually wanting to propose this strategy as well is that, like, if you're a non-Ruben Garrick owner, I actually think I'd buy Garrick. I'd probably put Garrick above Cherry Evans as a buy this week. He's probably actually ranked third. So probably Teddy, Latrell, and then probably Garrick. Reason being is that it looks like he's going to be back to goal kicking. In terms of the teams that he's going to face, they actually are pretty conducive to fullback points. So you look at the Dragons, the Eels, the Titans, 3 of the next 4. Those teams I think are all in like the top 4 or 5 teams that concede points to fullbacks. Plus he's got that goal kicking as well. He's got like a 5-round average of like 95 from memory as well. He's absolutely killing it. So I think any non-Ruben Garrick owners, I would seriously be looking at him as a replacement for Pappenhausen if you don't own him. If you're looking at Mam and Pappenhausen out, if you're a non-Ruben Garrick owner, I'd probably do Teddy and Garrick in. He's just super consistent. He's really doing well at fullback. Should have the goal kicking back as well. Is a serious vice captain option this week as well. So yeah, for me, Garrick, I'm really high on. And when I was putting these kind of tables together and seeing the teams that he was coming up against and how easily they concede points to fullbacks, that really gave me the extra confidence in that as well. So I really like Garrick as an option to bring in this week. Now I've got Brian To'o here as well. Now the teams that he's coming up against in terms of conceding to center wing points, they're not actually too bad. For example, like the Raiders, the Storm, the Sharks, Cowboys, all coming up in his end of season draw. These are the better teams at actually defending center wing. I don't own Brian To'o. I've kind of said it last week that I think Garrick, Manu, and To'o were probably the 3 best center wings for the run home. I'm starting to maybe change my thinking on that a little bit. Like To'o's numbers are still really good, like a base of 35 plus his tackle breaks. It basically gives him like a 45 to 50 floor each week. But he's just not quite hitting the same numbers as he was last season. Part of that is probably because he's playing on the right wing as opposed to, say, the left wing. I think he's a bit more comfortable coming out of his own end from the left side compared to the right side. And so when I look at that draw coming up, these are one of those times when I think if you're looking for pods, it's also partly the anti-pod where you go against a highly owned player. So I'm kind of doing that in my head with maybe not going with Latrell. It's definitely a risk, but I'm kind of making a bold play just to see if I can rise up ranks. And I think anti-podding someone like To'o, like some of those games are definitely scary, like the Eels concede a lot of points, Rabbitohs, Warriors are all teams that can concede points to wingers. But I'm looking at the Cowboys draw home and I think it looks better. And you've got Val Holmes who's goal kicking and is also about 80k cheaper as well. And way less owned as well if you look at the furthest right table. So for me, Holmes is one of those guys who I try to anti-pod To'o with. So that's another thing to think about as well. If you are looking at your Pappenhausen replacements, I do like the Holmes trade in this week. I unfortunately don't think I can get Holmes this week, which is really annoying because it's a great matchup. Could even be a low-key captain option. Because for me, when we get to my team later on, I'm thinking I need to get in Cherry Evans. And I'm probably wanting to get Tedesco as well. I think I'd probably still rank Cherry Evans just above Val Holmes, but that's a tight one. Only reason I say that is because Val Holmes has had easy games so far this year where he has been goal kicking, and he hasn't had big scores. So for anyone who's jumping on Holmes, I do think he's a great option, a good pod. But I'm just going to read out a few scores that he's got against some of the easier teams so far this year. And he should have been goal kicking, I think, in all of them. And all of these games were when he was playing at centre wing. So in round 1, he had the Bulldogs, where he scored 16 points, played the full 80 minutes. Although I do believe that the Cowboys lost to the Bulldogs that week. Warriors round 5 scored 75, which is good. Round 7 against the Titans, only 53, so not a massive score. Newcastle round 9, 74, which is good. Round 10, West Tigers, 33, which is not great. When you're versing someone like the Tigers. He scored 65 against the Dragons, which is good. He's only had the 1 ton this year, so even despite the goal kicking, he hasn't quite had the upside yet. So I think whilst he can still be a good antipod, someone like Cherry Evans, who I think has got a bit more of a ceiling, even if you take away the goal kicking that he got last week, he knocked out about 85, 90 points, Cherry Evans. that's kind of why I'm still thinking maybe I'd just about go with Cherry Evans over Val Holmes. And as you can kind of see, what I'm trying to do at the moment is trying to build a bit of a ranking list, because I know a lot of people are asking about, this guy or this guy. So I'm just trying to prioritize guys in my head. Similar to Ponga, I've put Dewey here because a couple of people mentioned him as a bit of a pod. I personally don't love it. The draw is not great. I know he scored well last week, but it's also the Tigers, similar with Ponga. Just can't really trust the team, honestly. So that's kind of my initial thinking here. So kind of a rough list, if you will, of players maybe to bring in for Pappy. I'd probably say Teddy number 1. Probably Latrell is definitely number 2, very, very closely behind Tedesco. Probably Garrick number 3, just above Cherry Evans. Then probably DCE. Probably Val Holmes at that point. Then probably Drinkwater just after, because he's got the good draw. And then after that, you're kind of looking elsewhere. So that's kind of my ranking. I might put that on Twitter later as well for anyone who's missed that part of the stream. But hopefully that helps you guys out there if you are looking at your Pappy replacements. Which ones to kind of prioritize. And that's just my thoughts as well. Now, there is one guy I have excluded out of this. My man, Joey Manu. So, I haven't really spoken about Manu in that whole list because I do think that at 800,000, at 800k, I do think you are paying a little bit overs for him now. He's been named at the centres. I know a few people earlier in the chat I saw were talking about VC and C's options, saying, VC Joey Manu. I think he could be a good VC choice. And if you look at what he's done in 2022 playing at centre wing, he's still averaged 68. Look, I put these graphs together. This is from the past 3 seasons when he's played at centre wing versus at the fullback or 5'8". We all kind of know it, but I thought it'd be good to put some numbers to it. He always averages better when he's playing outside of centre wing, basically for SuperCoach. And looking at the teams that he's coming up against, there are still some good opponents there for centre wing scoring. So it is a very tough one because he's got a negative break even. I still think he'll be a very good option this week. Not as good as obviously what he did last week, but he's pulled out scores of over 100 plus so far this year playing at centre wing. But at centre, 800k, it does feel like you are paying overs. Even though the Knights this week is a really good game, the problem is then Manly, Broncos and Cowboys, they're not the easiest matchups. So it pains me to say it, but I think if you don't own Manu, I feel like you can't go for him this week. I feel like Tedesco, for example, if you don't have one of Teddy or Manu, I'd be buying Tedesco over Manu this week, in my opinion. It's just the fact that he's playing in centre wing. It kind of he won't get those 150s, I think, playing at centre wing. Could be proven wrong. The guy's a machine. He tackle breaks for fun. But I just don't feel like he's a good buy this week at 800k. It feels expensive. It feels a bit like Talakai. You're paying overs after a massive week, and he might just not hit that, and you might just get a little bit disappointed as well. But look, I do enjoy owning Joey Manu. Ian, you make a good point. Look, it only takes Kiri one more HIA before Manu goes back to 5'8". Look, that's fair enough, but that's a complete hypothetical that we can't predict. And look, I could very easily look if someone says I'm buying Manu this week, I'd just be like, you know what? I can't argue with it because the guy's a machine. He's just absolutely pooping out SuperCoach points this season. And I was hoping that like as a Roosters fan, as someone pointed out earlier, I was hoping that he would stay in the halves because he's just such a weapon when he plays in the halves. I think hopefully there's some tactics to try to just get him more ball, even when playing at the right centre. But it does feel like a very, very high price to pay. Like I think the Pappy to Manu trade only gets you about 8k, which is not a lot really. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Manu. Like I've pulled together some of the 5'8" centre wing numbers of teams and how they concede against them. So like obviously Newcastle is actually a great team to play. They concede the most points to centre wing, so I could be eating all my words after maybe another big score this week. Your Manly are 11th, so they're pretty good. The Broncos, if I look at them, they're 12th. Cowboys are, what are they? Cowboys are 16th, so they're actually the best in the competition. So it does feel like now or never, but I feel like it is a little bit too late at the same time as well. But maybe you can have a plan to get him in, say, round 23. He might come down a little bit in price, just for the back end of the season. But it does feel a little late to get Manu as well. And we'll get on the VC and C, stuff later. I just don't think that Manu is the best vice captain this week. I think there are actually better options than Manu, just because he's playing in the centre wing. That's all. Okay, that's my little rant on Manu over as well. Obviously, guys, if you are new to the stream, what I tend to do is I go through some topics and then I'll answer a lot of your questions for about 10-15 minutes at the end. So keep posting your questions. I can kind of see them as I'm talking, but I'll definitely spend time just dedicated to questions as well. So thanks for bearing with me. Now, I haven't seen a lot of questions about Munster or Harry Grant. A couple of people did ask me on Twitter as well. Like, actually, this is a question that I pulled straight from Twitter. It was basically, is Munster an antipod given Storm's inconsistent form now that Pappenhausen is also out? Storm realistically only have 2 easy games left with the tough final 4 rounds. So yeah, it was a good question because I think a few people, again, selling Pappenhausen, they might be going straight to Munster via, say, like an Ezra Mam. The draw is good for the next 3. Rabbitohs, Warriors and Titans, I think, are all 3 teams that they can score well against. The last month is tough though. Panthers, Broncos, Roosters and Eels. But what I've done here, these numbers are coming from the SuperCoach Plus section where you can actually see what each player averages against a particular opponent. So I've just pulled those numbers there, and then I've just taken an average of those averages. So based on just historical numbers, Harry Grant is expected to average 75 for the rest of the season, based on the opponents he's facing. Munster, 72. Now, what I'll caveat that with is that Grant didn't look amazing last week. He scored 66 points with a try. Take that away, it's really not that good of a score. And with Grant, I think the Rabbitohs are in a good moment. So I don't think it's the easiest matchup on paper as well. 105 break even. I don't think that Grant is a must buy this week. Obviously, if you're looking at doing other moves next week and you know you're going to want Grant for the run home, then sure, I think it's fine to go with Grant this week. But I think Munster is more of a buy than, say, Grant is this week. I think Munster's going to be taking the biggest step with Pappenhausen out of anyone else in the spine. He scored 81 on the weekend, not doing really too much against the Raiders. And if you look at some of his scores, we know that Munster is a big game player. For example, 68 average against the Roosters, 70 against the Eels, 71 against the Broncos. To me, Munster is fixture-proof. And so I think if you're selling someone like an Ezra Mam, I'd be very comfortable buying Munster this week. Now, I think a few people on Twitter were also asking, would you buy Teddy or Munster first? Because of the matchup, I'd probably buy Tedesco first. I think because I think Tedesco is the best captain this week. That's coming into my thinking for those people who are looking at maybe one of Tedesco or Munster. I would probably buy Tedesco number 1. I think he's probably the best trade-in target this week, hence why I put him on the thumbnail as well. Munster's very close behind him though as well. I do think Munster, if you are looking for one of these 2 for the run home, Munster's probably the best one because I think he will be the best averaging 5'8". There's an argument that at hooker, you could go with an antipod, maybe of a Reece Robson, maybe a Damien Cook who's coming back this week. We haven't obviously spoken about that yet. Probably should have mentioned that with Latrell. They obviously get Cam Murray and Damien Cook back, which is obviously going to help their team out a lot as well. I think this game against the Storm will be I see this game as one of those kind of like 24-20 type games, where feasibly Latrell could get like a couple of try assists and easily get like an 80-90 points, but equally Munster could also get the same as well. So I definitely do like the Munster buy this week. Now, someone's just asked, actually, it's a good question. We'll probably, I'll actually just flick to it just now. Sorry, I'll flip back to that in a little bit. About selling Cody Walker for Munster this week. Is it necessary to sell Cody this week? I don't think it's necessary this week. One of the reasons is that we haven't seen the Rabbitohs play these top teams yet in the last 3 games with Latrell back. And Cody's got a break even of 4, which is probably going to hit. So he's not going to cost you money-wise. I think it's a good week to kind of just like sit on it and assess how the Rabbitohs look against, playing against the Storm, see how Cody goes. He would be it's difficult to play him this week, obviously, given the tough matchup. But, if your squad is suffering with depth, then if you have to play Cody, that's okay. Because he's looked a lot better with Latrell back as well. Definitely don't think he's a must-sell. Even with, say, like selling Cody for, say, like a Drinkwater, I feel like with the Pappenhausen out, that's kind of pushed back a lot of people's plans to sell Cody. And even if you are looking at selling Cody, I had Dylan Brown and Ezra Mam up here. I think Drinkwater I'd probably go with above these 2. Obviously Munster I think is number 1. So I think it's a good week to kind of sit on at Corey, for example. Just see how Cody goes this week. Next week, obviously Sharks is still a tough matchup. And then next week, Storm have, I think was it Warriors? It was Warriors, I think, whom they might have been versing. So that's kind of one of those games where you'd probably say, you know what, I need Munster this week. So that's probably what I would recommend. Maybe sit on it a week, and then you kind of get some extra information. I think it's hard to make a call of selling Cody just when they've been in a good moment. They've got Murray back, they've got Cook back. It gives you an example of like, all right, they've got their full team versus one of the better teams in the comp. Let's see how they go. So that's my opinion on, say, like 5/8 if people were looking at selling Cody. But I think a lot of people's plans to sell Cody kind of got pushed back a little bit because of the whole Pappenhausen injury as well. All right, so someone else on Twitter asked about run home pods, and Peter Morendi has asked, is Nick Meaney 80% goal kicker, 600k, is he an option as well? So I have included him as one of the pods to potentially consider for the run home. So I've got 4 pod players here. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry. 1 second. Oop. Okay, anyway, all right, just had to send a quick message to someone. So yeah, so these are some of the pods that you might want to consider. So just then I was talking about Cody and the 5/8. If, for example, you want to go real pod, you could go with someone like Matt Burton. He scored pretty well against the Rabbitohs. I think he ended up on 83. He's had a really good long-term average over the last 8 weeks, basically, but he's got a 5-round average of 73. He's definitely a pod. Good matchups as well in the Titans, the Knights, and the Warriors coming up. So there's definitely opportunities for someone like a Burton who's goal kicking. Bulldogs as well are looking pretty good too. So that's one pod I think someone wanted to, well, I don't know if people wanted to know about Burton as a pod, but that is a pod that you can consider. Jesse Ramian, I need to eat my words because I was like, no, Ramian's not an option. Go for the wingers, but Katoa has been ruled out for the rest of the season, unfortunately. So a lot of people are obviously selling Katoa to get the likes of, say, your Val Holmes, etc. Ramian has got a tough matchup this week of the Panthers, but he does also have a negative break even. So he's definitely a pod that you can consider. And obviously, we know that the Sharks have a great run home. You can see it there, like Dragons, Tigers, Manly, Bulldogs, and Knights. That's probably the best last 5 games of the season of any team. He's a bit more expensive at 596k. Like him or Val Holmes is a bit of a tough one. I'd probably still lean Holmes just with the kicking, but that draw is probably better than Holmes as well. So yeah, I think Raymond's a good pod to consider as well. You know, if you're, say, not a Ronaldo Multalo owner, who I think is quite highly owned, you might look to anti-pod with someone like a Ramian. In terms of Peter, in terms of your question of Nick Meaney, like I think he's a good option at 600k. Like I think he's averaged when he's played at fullback about 69 points so far this year, and he's got the goal kicking as well. Definitely you can take a flyer on him. I don't think I'm not that pod that much of a pod chaser, so I personally won't be bringing in someone like a Nick Meaney. It's just not like, I'm probably not going to do it, but I can see the merit in it. It's just tough when at a center wing position you've got really good options elsewhere, like a Holmes, for example. But if you're not convinced by Holmes, for like 5k more, you go with the Nick Meaney. You are kind of taking a bet on the Storm and turning things around as well. And look, the next 3 are really good as well. He has been scoring well. 5-round average of 73 is pretty solid as well. Even despite all of the Storm's issues in the last 3 weeks, in terms of just not performing that well. Like if I look at his scores from the last, if I look at his scores when he's played at fullback, so he scored 35 this year, 70, 78, 85, 77, and then 71 last week on the wing. So he's got some good scores in there for sure when he plays at fullback, and the goal kicking. The goal kicking really helps too. So I don't mind Nick Meaney as a shout as well for any pod chasers out there. Now the last one is Luciano Leilua. It's a bit of a tough one, I think, to advocate getting him this week. He's been named at prop, but it's also the first week with like Nanai coming back and a lot of the other forwards. Cotter should be coming back in round 20, I believe, as well. He should be coming back soon, so that might eat into Luciano's minutes. But he is versing his old club. We know about the good draw for the Cowboys as well. So someone to consider. You know, if you are looking really, really cheap in your 2RF, just as a bit of a downgrade, but you don't want to go to a straight enough, maybe you can consider a mid-ranger like Luciano as well. Just a pod that I thought of with the good draw, and I saw that he was starting this week as well. Alright, so that's the stuff on pods. I'll quickly look at top 10 trade-ins and outs, but I think we've covered most of the big trade-ins. Like if I look at that list, the only couple that we haven't spoken about is Nathan Cleary. Look, if you're if you're a non-Nathan Cleary owner, there's never a bad time to get him, even with the tough matchups against the Sharks. He's playing at home. Can't really fault that trade in. Jojo Fafita, the Titans actually don't have that bad of a run coming up as well. Surprisingly, though, who I haven't seen in the top 10, we may as well just mention it, is David Fafita. So I wonder if anyone is looking at going with David Fafita. So actually, I can see Oliver, you're in the chat. You're saying Pappenhausen and Isaiah Tass to Latrell and Fafita. I honestly don't mind going with Fafita this week as well. He's got the Bulldogs. He scored 75 points last week doing like nothing. Like I bought Fafita last week. He was on 53 after the game finished. I was like, yeah, it kind of reflects what he did. He didn't really do much in the game. Then he updates to 75, and I was like, how the hell did he get to 75? He ended up with about a base of 49. He had like 12 points in tackle breaks. He had like 12 points in offloads. I did zone in and out of the game, to be fair, so I may have missed them, but I just didn't remember him having that much impact. And someone like Fafita is getting 75, not doing anything. That's the kind of guys that you want to get as well. So yeah, I think Fafita is a great option to bring in as well. We have obviously, if you're looking at bringing those center wings via Pappenhausen, if you've got the duels, you can obviously bring in a 2RF. Really don't mind going Fafita as well if you've got the chance to do so. If you've got kind of some of those lingering 2RFs, like I know a few people have like Mitch Barnett. Barnett at lock is not that good of an option, so selling someone like a Barnett to Fafita would be a good option to do as well. So I do like Fafita. This is the different Fafita. This is the center wing one, but I do like Dave Fafita as a buy as well. Zach Hosking, look, he's out of the squad altogether, so he's not going to be an AE issue unless there's like an injury to one of the Broncos forwards and he comes onto the bench. But I don't mind as a downgrade, 175k, but don't view him as like a cheapie who's going to make money because he's completely out of the squad altogether. In terms of the top trade outs, so obviously Pappenhausen being number 1 is no surprise. I'm fine with number 2, 3, and 4 as well. Like Ezra Mam, I'm probably selling this week. Will Penasini scored not that great against the Warriors, lost a lot of cash. We saw with Dylan Brown earlier, the draw is not that good for the Eels now run home. So I think he's fine to move on as well. And as is Carraz, they have got some good matchups coming up. They've got the Titans this week. But if you're going like, say, Carraz to Holmes, for example, or Garrick, whatever, I'd say, yeah, that's probably a good move. Talakai being sold does surprise me. I think the time to sell Talakai was maybe last week when he was out, or the week before in round 17. Now that he's fit and he's playing, and also Katoa is out, that basically locks in Talakai, I think, into his centre wing position. There was some, question marks because of Tracy doing really well. But Tracy's now going to play in the wing. Talakai is going to be in the centre. So I think Talakai probably would be holding now. We saw with Raymond earlier, the run home is really good. I've sold him. That was a couple of weeks ago now, though. But yeah, I think Talakai is a fine hold. As is Taylor May. I was quite surprised to see Taylor May on this list because I think, yes, he scored 47 last week, but that was 47 when he had no attacking stats. He's playing the left wing spot of the Panthers. We know is like one of the best spots in the league or for a Supercoach player. So for me, he's a fine hold. I'll play him on matchups if I have to, but he's a gun, in my opinion. I think he's got a 66 average, so I was very surprised to see Taylor May on this sell list. Max King, I can kind of understand. Maybe when I get to my own team, I'll explain a little bit more. But I think for now, Max King is fine. He's pumping out like 50, 55. But when Luke Thompson comes back, if Max King does, say, get relegated to the bench, I might need to sell him at that point. Maybe even back to Payne Haas, just because I can still pay cheap money. Payne Haas might be like a low 500s. And he would be a pod in comparison to, say, someone like a Joe Tarpany who's been killing it. But Tarpany is also like 200k more expensive than Max King or Payne Haas. So I'm looking at maybe selling Max King in a couple of weeks whenever Luke Thompson comes back. And it might be straight back to Payne Haas just to, again, take a bit of a pod, but a fallen gun who hopefully after a couple of weeks rest now eases up his shoulders and he's good to go. Isaiah Tass being sold, I can kind of also get around. Tough and draw coming up. He's kind of made some money. For now, I'm keeping him just as a bit of the depth option. Cobbo, I think, yeah, again, not named this week. The head knocks obviously seem to be affecting him still, which is a shame. Obviously, you all know my mixed emotions with Cobbo and my relationship with him for Supercoach, but you don't want to see like a 19-year-old kid still suffering from head knocks. That's unfortunate, but I think probably is a sell. He's at a good price to sell at the same time. And Suwali's a bit of a tougher one. I know he's got the good matchup this week against the Knights, but again, there do seem to be other better options for his centre wing, so I don't mind selling him, but this week I'd actually probably consider holding just because of the matchup. Okay, so I'll quickly just touch on the round 19 captaincy, and then I'll quickly look at my team, and then I'll get to your questions as well, and we'll probably wrap up after about an hour, 5 minutes. So in terms of round 19 captaincy, a lot of the top teams are versing each other. So for example, Storm versus the Rabbitohs, Sharks versus the Panthers. So I haven't included really anyone like, say, Cleary, for example. Cleary is always a safe option, but I think this week you can go elsewhere. So I'm personally thinking Manly is a good option to vice captain. I think the Roosters and the Sea Eagles both play on the Friday, like right after each other. So there would be a very quick turnaround in using your vice captain and captain. But given the matchup against the Dragons, Garrick at fullback, goal kicking, he is who I would go for a vice captain this week, just over Cherry Evans, just because of the goal kicking factor. So Garrick for me is probably the best vice captain this week. If you want to go maybe with one of the Roosters players and say Manu or Tedesco, you could maybe consider vice captain on Teddy or Manu. I'm personally thinking that I might straight captain Tedesco this week. I think I'm going to go vice captain Garrick and captain Tedesco. I'm not looking at Manu this week just because of the fact that he's got he's playing at centre wing. He's not playing in the 5'8" or fullback spot. If he was 100%, he'd be my consideration, similar to last week. I haven't included anyone from the Eels versus the Broncos just because I think that game is a bit hard to call. Both teams are kind of similar in terms of their ladder position. Jaden, like you're asking, Dillbags for a vice captain. I'm not personally too keen on the Dillbags one. I think he's been really solid recently. He scored like 40 points in base last week, but I'm not seeing as much of the kind of the ceiling from him in the last few weeks. I think he's going to be like a safe 65-70, but I think with a vice captain, you want to chase those guys who you've got that opportunity to loop with, like what Manu did last week. And I think Garrick is one of those guys who can easily go 100 plus. So I think that's why I'm not leaning personally with the Eels guys. I think the Broncos is not a great matchup as well. Sam, just answer your question about Cleary. Yeah, look, Cleary is always an option. I just think this week you can use this week as an opportunity to go a little bit different, because I think a lot of people, if they're unsure, will just go safe with Cleary for like he'll probably safely get like a 70 to 80. But someone like Tedesco, someone like Garrick as a vice captain, maybe even a straight captain, these are the guys who I think can have the better potential to go like 100 plus this week. That's why I'm not looking personally at Cleary this week, but he's never a bad option, obviously. Just to answer your question, Drew, about why Garrick hasn't been goal kicking, he suffered a hip pointer injury in round 16. So that kind of affected his goal kicking leg, I think. But he took the last goal kick of the game last week, so he should be okay to continue goal kicking this week. But we might get some late mail on that as well. But he should be fine, I think, for this week. Munster, obviously Munster could be an option as well against the Rabbitohs, but again, Storm not looking the best moment. I'm thinking elsewhere with, say, like the Roosters or the Manly players. Fafita is an option. Look, if the guy gets 75 points doing nothing against the Bulldogs, if he just gets a try, he'll score like 100, 110 plus. So I saw someone in the chat, Cooper says, "See you on Fafita, you madman." I don't think I'm going to be captaining Fafita. I don't think I've got the cojones for that, or the mental fortitude, because it is very stressful watching him saying like, why aren't you doing anything? He's an option for a pod, but I'm personally still thinking Tedesco. If you've got one of Drinkwater or Holmes, they are also potential captaincy options against the Tigers. I'm not going there myself because I don't really own any of the Cowboys players, but Teddy for me is the one that I'm seeing as the captain this week. All right. That's enough of the topics. So I'll quickly just show you guys my team, and then I'll do this for about a couple of minutes, and then we'll get to all of your questions as well. I know you guys have been really patient. Thanks so much for sticking around. We've got 158 viewers. That's crazy. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. That's really big numbers. So yeah, give the stream a like as well if you are enjoying it. So in terms of my team, I've already done a couple of trades. So you can see I've got 4 trades left, which is running a bit thin, not ideal. But what I did was basically I took out Ezra Mam for Cherry Evans via Nick. I did Cherry Evans. Sorry, let me rephrase. I did Ezra Mam out for Cherry Evans, and I did Pappenhausen for Tedesco. I've got VC on Garrick. I've got captaincy on Tedesco. That's just kind of how I'm looking to set up. I've got some sit-start decisions as well. Like, do I play Mulatalo against the Panthers? Do I play both Dunga or Taylor May? Do I maybe just play one of the two? but all my other reserves kind of speak for themselves. Like Dylan Brown will be a play for sure, but like Hines is I know Hines got a tough matchup, but you don't drop someone like Hines. I think Cleary, Munster, there's no way they're getting dropped, and then Fafita against the Bulldogs. So I'm sitting out like McInnes, which is fine. He's coming off the bench again, and he's also got the tough matchup. So those are the two trades that I'm looking at for this week. What I could also think about is maybe getting in someone like a Holmes, but I'm just thinking Cherry Evans. I kind of have a better feeling about going with Cherry Evans. And then what this might let me do for next week, I could just hold trades next week. I've got 220k, but what I am thinking about doing is, if I do want to do 2 more upgrades elsewhere in the team, one will probably be for Max King whenever Luke Thompson comes back, and maybe I can go straight to Tarpany, or maybe I go cheaper with like a Payne Haas. And then with that leftover money, what I'm hoping for is maybe doing like a Isaiah Tass out for like a Val Holmes, or I might just have to go cheaper and find another centre wing option. I know Ian, you're asking about Corey Oates. I know you were very keen on Corey Oates for round 16. I think I'm less keen now on Corey Oates just because they've kind of played that Titans matchup, and I think their draw now is a little bit more up and down. So Corey Oates for me, I'm not as keen on maybe as, say, a few weeks back when he had a good stretch of games coming up. Whereas now it's kind of a bit more of a mixed bag. Like Eels, Eels and Tigers is good, but then you've got Roosters, Knights is good, Melbourne, Para again. To be fair, the draw is still quite good, so I think he is a pod option as well if you can play on matchups. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at with my team at the moment. I'm not really too sure about the sit starts, but that's it. I've got Tedesco and I've got Cherry Evans this week. All right, so that's all the stuff I need to go through in terms of the stream. We'll get to your questions now for sure. So we'll go for about 10 minutes or so. I'm seeing whispers in the chat as well. What's my thoughts on triple captaining Dane Laurie? My man, you're getting confused between 2 different fantasy games there. Why don't I have Sancho? Because he's a bum. No, he's not a bum. He is playing again, actually. I think the Manchester United friendly is happening right now, from memory. He's in the front 4 with Rashford and Martial. Martial scored, Rashford scored, mate. Sancho hasn't scored. Why hasn't he scored? He's a bum. Don't get Sancho. Isaac saying you're tempted to captain Fafita. Yeah, look, Fafita could be an option. I just don't think I can bear myself to watch Fafita as my captain. All right, let's get to some questions. Olaquatu or Fafita, Christian? I would actually go Fafita. Olaquatu's been really good, but like Olaquatu scored 82 with a line break try. Fafita scored 75 doing nothing. So I think Fafita, he's also cheaper. Like he's 575 versus 663. 100% I'd be going Fafita over Olaquatu. He's more of a pod as well. I think, Sam, you also did ask a question about Fafita's ownership numbers as well. So I'm just going to have a quick look at that for you while we're talking about Fafita. So if you're still in the chat, stick around for the next 20 seconds at least while I find this for you. So let's look up David Fafita. You know what, actually, I'll bring it up here. I've got the thing right open. So again, shout out to the SC Playbook. I'll quickly post this link in the live stream chat as well, just so you guys can have the two. Let's have a look at David Fafita. Oh, it'd be nice if I could spell. Okay, ownership. Oh, I clicked the wrong one. They've had a couple of ones where there's players who've had like 2 entries and the one's blank. So you just need to try the other one. Yeah, so Sam, essentially no ownership. I know a lot of people bought him last week, but yeah, look, he will be a definite option at that slow earned as well. United are all bums. Yeah, Gavin, I agree with you. Of course, I'm looking at your logo. I'm pretty sure I think that's Liverpool, if I'm not mistaken. You should captain Tass. Josh, I think you should captain I think you should perma captain Sancho for the rest of the season, mate. I think that worked out well for you last season. You should definitely do that again. Thinking of a real pod play on form and matchup, playing Saab this week. I haven't spoken about Jason Saab at all. Yeah, look, he's very cheap. He scored well last week as well. How much does he cost? How much does Saab cost? If you're looking for a cheap option, 356k. It's not a bad price. He'll make you money, that's for sure. Oh, look, if you're an owner of Saab, then yeah, I would definitely be playing him this week against the Dragons. You've held Ruben Cotter this long. Is it too late to sell? I think so, because I think what you can get out of him is also just the duel. You can use him to flip players around. So I think if you've held this long, I'd probably just keep holding. Traded Man for Cleary, Paps to Teddy, Carras for Garrick. Thoughts? Oh, Bailey. Those are three awesome trades in my opinion. Really like that. Ian says Cleary to get HA in the first 10 minutes. Manu goes to 6 and scores 150 plus. Look, I don't like this speculation about Cleary getting HA. I don't think it's quite nice to be talking about players potentially getting head injuries and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to entertain any more thoughts of players getting HIAs. I know you might not mean badly, but I don't think it's a good thing to be talking about, to be honest. Cool website, yeah, Cameron. It's a fantastic resource. Is Luke Thompson No, I think apparently he was having personal things in the UK. But I saw a tweet from Gus Gould saying that he was flying back to Australia. So he might be back in the team soon. Tedesco or Garrick? Christian, probably Tedesco still for me. I mentioned we went through that quite a lot earlier. I probably ranked Tedesco as the number 1 buy this week. I think I had Garrick as number 3. I had Teddy, Latrell, Garrick, DCE, and then I think I had Holmes. I think that was my top 5 trade-ins this week. Hi, Mar, would you trade Suwali or Kula for Garrick? Ooh, interesting one. I think Kula is probably still got some money to make. Minus 16 break even. I'd probably sell Suwali, to be honest. Yeah, just on break evens. And still good matchup. Probably sell Suwali. You can still make some money out of Kula and sell maybe next week or the week after. Should you play Kula or Mulatalo? I'd actually play Kula over Mulatalo. Just in the matchup again. Would you play this week Talakai or Thungor? Probably Thungor. I think playing for the better team. They've probably both got a similar flaw, but I think Thungor, just with playing on the better team, I'd probably just about fancy him instead of Talakai. If you could only get Teddy, Tarpany, or Cook for the run home, which would you go? Oh, it has to be Teddy for me. I think out of those 3, Raiders actually do have a very good draw home. Don't get me wrong. So Tarpany would probably still continue to do really well, if not get even better, just with more attacking stats as well. So it's between Teddy and Tarpany for me. I think Cook could be a very good option for the run home. But I think I'd probably still go Teddy. Just about Teddy, Jake. Thoughts on Paps and King to Teddy and Holmes? King, is that Max King or Josh King? Look, if it's one of Max King or Josh King, Max King's been fine, but I think, getting to a Holmes has got a bit of a ceiling in comparison to him. And then Tedesco, I think, is the number 1 buy. Yeah, I think those are 2 good trades, Isaac. Is Valentine Holmes a good captain? Yeah, I think he is. I put him in the captaincy section. The only thing that's given me pause is, as if you heard earlier when I was talking about Holmes, he has had some lower scores even in those easier matchups in so far this year. So that is a bit of a concern. Could be a pod, but I'm just kind of more going with a reliable option as well, like in a Tedesco. Max King or Talakai as final reserve? Oh, geez. Max King looked concerning, and then he eventually got to 53 points. I'm just going to have a look at his minutes. I think he played 48 minutes. Yeah, so it's about 57, 53. Look, if Talakai scores against the Panthers and you don't play him, are you going to be too upset? Because it's the Panthers. They're going to have all of their Origin guys back, fit and healthy. So I'd probably just play Max King over Talakai. Not meaning to talk bad, just unlucky right now. Had knocks. Yeah, no, Ian. I'm not having a go at you. I think I was kind of getting the same thing as well. He definitely is. He's 100% a higher risk. That's for sure. But I just want to be talking about it, saying this might happen, and then Manu gets 150. Look, if it happens, it happens, but hopefully not for the poor guy. Holmes or Carrigan? Oh, probably Val Holmes. I think Carrigan's a safe option to get 67, maybe 60, 65. Val Holmes is the same, but with a bit more of a ceiling, so I'd probably go Val Holmes. David? Isaiah Yeo or Fafita? Oh, it's got to be Fafita. I know Isaiah Yeo has been really good. Own him for the early part of the season. But Fafita, if he's getting 75, not doing anything, that's the kind of guy that you want to own. Cheese, Tomato, Onion, Mayo, welcome in the chat. You have a question. Should you trade in Jake Granville for Chris Randall? No, I don't like that. Granville's, I think, coming off the bench still. I know Randall's basically a non-option now, but Granville, definitely not. He's coming off the bench, plays very low minutes. There's a multitude of better options, I think, at hooker that you can go for. Like Cook's an option, Grant's an option, Robson, potentially one. I think someone else also asked about Appy. Like, Appy Coruscant was really, really good too. No, Granville I can't say is buy. Would you play Saab or Max King as a last reserve? I'd probably play Saab. He's got the ceiling and got the better matchup. Like, Max King is fine for 55-60. Saab is a 20 or 120. And I think based on the matchup, yeah, I'd probably still say Saab. Just take the chance. Like, you always have to question, are you going to be more upset with seeing Max King's 60 on your bench or Saab's 120 if he happens to do it? Should you trade out Barnett, Cooler, or Mam? I'd probably... Well, I mean, it depends who you're going to bring in, because I'd say Mam is... he's an okay hold, but he's also in one of those positions where you can target higher ceiling guys versus, say, like a Barnett. Like, my gut feel is probably Barnett. I think him playing at lock is just not good for him. Maybe like a Barnett to Fafita, maybe a Barnett to a centre wing via duel, I think is probably what I'd look to do with him. Trading Paps, who's the best front row? Best front row I think has to be Joe Tarpany, the way that he's going. Raiders have a pretty soft run home. I'll quickly just highlight it here. I mentioned it twice now, probably may as well show it. So they've got the Warriors, the Titans, Panthers is tough, but then they've got the Dragons, the Knights, Manly, and Tigers. Like, honestly, Raiders have a fantastic run home apart from that Panthers game, but Tarpany's a forward, so it's not really going to affect him that much, that he's got a tough game. So, yeah, Tarpany for me in front row, if you want to go there from Paps. Who is the ultimate plod king? Who is the plod king? It's got to be Ewan Aikens up there, bit of a plodder. To'o Harris, a bit of a plotter, although he's got a bit of a ceiling last week. Sean Lane is the plod king. Sean Lane is the plod king. 60 in base and nothing else last week. Pappy and Barnett for Tohu and Teddy. Look, I know Tohu did well last week, but I don't think that's going to be what he normally gets every week. I think he's going to be more of your 60 a week, and I don't think Tohu's going to be going for my second row forward. I think I'd probably prefer going with Fafita. If you don't even own Fafita, if you've got duels, I'd rather just go for a centre wing who's got a bit more of a ceiling. Cam Murray, I didn't even talk about Cam Murray as a buy. Like Cam Murray at 582k. We spoke about him last week. Like any Barnett sellers, if you've already got Fafita, for example, going to Cam Murray, he's going to knock out 60, 65 with ease probably, plus maybe even more if the Rabbitohs continue to play well. Arrow to Fafita. Yeah, Rennie, I think that's a pretty safe move. Arrow's fine, but Fafita's got that ceiling. Play Haas or Mulatalo? I'd probably play Haas. I think Haas is going to get you a safer 60 than Mulatalo. Like Mulatalo had the tough matchup last week and scored 33. I don't think Haas is going to get you that kind of a score. So, yeah, I'd probably play a bit safer Isaac with Haas. Play Ponga or May as a final reserve. Brendan, like I got that decision wrong last week. I played Taylor May over Thungle and he outscored Taylor May. I typically always favour the wingers just because they're more likely, with their sweep plays, they're more likely to get the line breaks plus the tries. So I'd probably say Taylor May again, but it's a tight one. But yeah, probably Taylor May still, I think. He scored 47, not with no attacking stats last week, so he's got a good floor as well. Whiten as a pod. I can never get around Whiten. Look, I know that draw is really good, but his average for the season is 49 points. You don't really want that, I think, in your 5'8 spot. Like, for me, he's one of those guys who's a great real-life player, but it just doesn't translate to SuperCoach that well. So, for me, personally, not for me. Like, a 49 average, you don't really want that, I think, in your 5'8 position. Saab or Max King's last reserve? I think I answered that already. I said I'd play Jason Saab. should you sell Tyson Frizzell or trade for Dave Fafita? I'm not really understanding your question, Paul. Are you saying you should sell Tyson Frizzell or trade? Are you saying you're selling Tyson Frizzell for Fafita? I probably wouldn't sell Frizzell unless he's a late out, because I think he has some rib issues. But actually, to be fair, Frizzell to Fafita is probably an upgrade in my opinion, so I probably would do that trade actually. AJ or Manu? Oh, I'd probably still say Manu, Ian, just because of the draw for the Rabbitohs being so tough. Yeah, probably still Manu. That guy, man. That guy last week just sent me soaring. Alright, we'll go for a couple more minutes, guys, and I think we're probably going to wrap up there. So we'll do maybe 3 more questions. Hopefully I can do the lockout stream on Thursday evening as well. So if there's any questions I wasn't able to get to, hopefully we can get to any of them as well in the Q&A on Thursday. And that rhymes, Q&A Thursday. This week going Paps, Man, Barnett to Teddy, Trell and Tarpany. I can't fault any of those 3 trade-ins, broads. That's a nice trio that you're getting there. The 3 T's, Teddy, Trell, Tarpany. Okay, let's see. I'm sorry for the spam. Paps and Cobbo to Garrick and Latrell, or Paps and Cobbo to Garrick and Burton via duels, or Paps and Garrick to Garrick and Tarpany. Okay, firstly, to answer your question, I would not be keeping Cobbo. I'd probably sell just with the head knocks. So that's that done. So basically, you're basically asking Cobbo to either your Paps to Garrick is basically locked in for you. So what you're asking is you're doing Cobbo to Latrell, Burton or Tarpany. I still think I'd go Latrell out of those 3. I think Latrell's probably still got the highest ceiling with the goal kicking and the form that he's in at the moment. Yes, Burton's got a good draw, but I'm looking at the teams, Bulldogs versus Rabbitohs. I think the Rabbitohs will score more points over the Bulldogs, so therefore just by default, Latrell with his goal kicking I think will do better. Who would you get, Papa Teddy or Munster? Yeah, this is an interesting question. I think I'd probably still get Teddy this week over Munster. I just think he's the best captain this week as well. So that's kind of coming into my thinking. But I think as long as if you can get Teddy this week, make sure you have an avenue to Munster next week, because Munster next week has got the Warriors. You're definitely going to want him for that. Thoughts on Dave Fafita? Yeah, look, I think he's a fantastic trade, and we spoke about him a little bit earlier as well. I still can't believe he got 75. I have no idea how he got 75. Alright, we'll do one more question and then we'll probably end it there. From OT Hero, Paps and Mam to Cherry Evans and Manu, or DC and Teddy. No, I think if you're buying one of Teddy or Manu this week, I think you've got to go Teddy. Just Manu playing at centre is not going to be as good as if he's playing at 5'8" or fullback. I think Teddy will be the best captain option this week, so I probably have to say Teddy for that one. But I think Paps and Mams to Cherry Evans and Teddy, those are my exact same moves that I'm doing as well. Okay, so I will do last question from Bryce. If you have no trades, Teddy or Munster? If you have no trades, Teddy or Munster? Bloody hell. That's a tough one, tough one. I'm not going to answer that right now, Bryce, because I honestly can't tell you. It's very difficult. Because you've added the thing of no trays left. If I had to stick with just one of Teddy or Munster, actually, you know what? I'd probably say Munster, but I think Teddy's a better buy this week. But I'd say for the rest of the season, I'd probably want Munster, because I think he at 5'8" is the top dog. Fullback, there's a question. It could be Latrell, it could be someone else. So yeah, I'd probably say Munster. All right, gonna end the stream there. Lots of questions on Latrell, Teddy. I don't want to say Teddy, DC, Latrell, Holmes again for the rest of the day. I feel like I've been thinking about them all day, trying to think of how would I rank them. Hopefully that stream helped you out, guys. Give the stream a like as well if you did enjoy it. Hopefully we'll be back on Thursday for a Q&A lockout stream as well. And obviously any questions in the meantime, if you post them in the YouTube comments, I'll do my best to try to get to you guys as much as I can. But thanks everyone for joining me on this Tuesday evening. Good luck with your trade decisions. It's a very pivotal week, I think, with all the Pappenhausen outs as well. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy it, and I'll catch you all in the next one. See ya.